Here we go again. The whole good art takes time talking point rears its ugly head again. And this time, the culprit is John Talks. John Talks is a guy who was a part of the fandom menace, and for a time was also a big Rippaverse fan before he turned. Who he likes and doesn't like is not a matter of contention for me. It's simply the point he raised in what became a quote tweet battle between himself and me. This exchange inspired me to make this video because it gives me the opportunity to show some more examples of the flaw of the good art takes time talking point. This also wasn't the first time I tackled this. Check out my earlier video, Spawn and Godzilla Debunk This live from Comicsgate. Link will be in the description. Let's go over John Talks' tweet. It was a quote tweet in response to something Rock and Roll Ninja artist Matt Barr said. He said, "Did Alan Moore write and draw and market and fulfill orders for Watchmen? No, he could just focus on writing. Did Dave Gibbons write and draw and market and fulfill orders for Watchmen? No, he could just focus on drawing." He mentions James Cameron and Avatar, but I want to stick with the comics argument. He's implying Ethan as a one-man enterprise. He probably doesn't realize that Kyle Ritter does the coloring for Ethan, but we'll get back to that later. John Talks argues for what he says is the quality of the books rather than how fast he gets them, repeating the fallacy that a good book cannot be delivered in a timely fashion. Ethan started work on Cyberfrog Blood Honey in 2018 and opened in Indiegogo, then started fulfillment of it in 2019, 1 year after its original projected shipping date. Not entirely egregious. Red Planet began fulfillment in early 2023. Almost 2 years after its projected shipping date of May 2021, and there are still backers for this campaign, 4 years after its projected fulfillment, who haven't received their items yet. We will touch on Rainbow the Brute later in this video. But John Talks' point was because Ethan had multiple projects and multiple rows for each book, that it somehow excuses him for being late with his books. The good art takes time argument doesn't work when you're late with action figures, die-cast cars, and books you don't even draw. But for sake of brevity, we're sticking with the Cyberfrog and Rainbow the Brute books. The idea that an indie comic book creator can't put a book out in a timely manner if he does all the work of the book and for the book is historically preposterous. Indie comic book history is full of writers and artists who put out consistent material. One example is Jeff Smith's Bone. From 1991 to 2004, Smith produced 55 issues of Bone, a 13-year span. That's about 4 issues a year, 24 pages each, about 101 pages a year of content for 13 years. 1,344 pages in the 13 years Bone was published. Smith wrote, drew, and published Bone. Yes, he had some help from his wife on the business side, but I knew that when I brought this example up, that challenge to it would be the art style. Yes, Smith's art style is more simpler than Van Sciver's, and John Talks jumped on this. But as someone said to John Talks, what is the excuse for Rainbow the Brute since it was supposed to have a simpler style? John Talks said it was like comparing apples to oranges. He goes into Smith's panel compositions and the low page count per book, despite the fact that 4 issues a year would equal over 100 pages. I had Dave Sim ready to counter this argument. Dave Sim, the creator, writer, and artist, and publisher of Cerebus, did the entirety of the art along with everything else from 1977 to 1984, totaling 64 issues, before Gerhardt took over the background art until the run ended in 2004. We'll focus on the first 64 issues. The art was more complex than Smith's Bone, as well as panel structure and design. You would have thought the argument would have at least stalemated. But no. John Talks retorted with the rhetorical, what other books have Dave Sim wrote and published? Then he goes on to critique Sim's art style and brings up questions on him using photocopying for his backgrounds. I'm not sure if John Talks is aware, but Ethan Van Sciver has been exposed, or rather, his colorist, Kyle Ritter, exposed as using stock photos in the backgrounds in quite a few of the panels for Cyberfrog. No word from John Talks about that though. In his attempt to minimize Dave Sim's accomplishments in indie comics, he ended up exposing Van Sciver's own shortcuts. Chad Townsend, an artist for Warner Brothers TV and animation, also brought up how Sim toured with Ninja Turtles creator Kevin Eastman, called The Spirit of Independence, where they promoted local artists in those cities and states they toured in. Even Paul Roach had to chime in on John Talks' ill-advised take on Sim's art. He said, "Yeah, that guy, not you of course, Chad, clearly has no clue about producing comics as a profession. Sim wrote a good essay about how the benchmark for a pro is being able to produce an entire finished page each day, and he did it too, on the regular. All this stuff about what quality takes 5 years is asinine. It doesn't take 5 years or even 1 year to draw 48 pages or whatever if you park your ass in the chair and just draw it. Look at what Kirby did. Even though he was only a penciler, he draws several or many detailed pages a day, and so did his inker, Mike Royer. Or Neil Adams produced a ton of pages and covers. Dozens of others were high producers. It's all just excuses. These highly productive pros didn't stream for hours every night or go to baseball games and casinos and F around constantly. They sat down and drew. I've done it myself. I have thousands of pieces of art to show for it. Some comics, illustrations, and a lot more animation art, layouts, designs, and advertising art. Anyone who cannot understand these simple facts are clearly deeply steeped in the brainwashed, cold, brain-frying internet bamboozled juice." John Talks didn't stop though. He went on to say, "I don't disagree. It's better to underpromise and overdeliver than vice versa. I'm sure he would do things differently in hindsight, and you're free to criticize the lateness of books. Here's why it's not an issue for me. It's not like he's in denial about it or blaming anyone. If he was not accepting responsibility for it, I would call him out. He's not withholding refunds like Dan Fraga. If he was, I'd call him out. It's not like he ran off with the money. If he was, you get the point. People will eventually get what they paid for, so I don't fully understand why this is such a point of contention for some. If you're unhappy, get your refund. But as long as people are willing to wait for the book, you can think it's wrong all you want, and in principle, you have a case. But in the market, it doesn't matter. As long as people don't care about waiting, you're just shouting in the void." So his argument was customers don't mind waiting for late books. Extremely late books. As long as the art is good? Well, there's a whole comment section on the Rainbow the Brute campaign with lots of customers who don't seem quite patient. And let me not get started on the loads of comments on the Wrecked Planet campaign, a project that was supposed to fulfill back in 2021, with people still having received their products. John Talks finally had no rebuttal for that one. Our exchange was over at that point. But I wonder if John Talks would care to explain how Ethan Van Sciver mocking Eric July's ancestor's tombstone, who helped inspire the Isom character, directly relates to him marketing his expanding library of late books and products.
That Isom was Christian at all. And I think he was inspired by Isom Knox's tombstone, which said he died as he lived as a Christian, which is stupid. I don't even know what that means. Whoever made that tombstone and wrote that slogan on Eric's ancestor's tombstone was low IQ, probably had impulse control issues. He died as he lived, a Christian, so what? What does that mean?
He may want to sit this one out. I do want to give special mention to Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, the comic by Invader Zim creator Jonan Vasquez, a comic series about Johnny 9C, who commits a series of murders while exploring the forces that compel him to do it. The series lasted 7 issues, from August 1995 to January 1997. The art style is a bit simplistic, but experimental, and an argument can be made for some decent ink work in the art. Also, the design of each panel is exceptional visual storytelling. Each issue averaged 24 to 28 pages. That's almost 200 pages of content in a 17-month span. This doesn't count the fact that in July of 97, 6 months after the series' original run ended, a director's cut of the entire series with new material was collected in a single volume, hardcover and trade paperback. What are your thoughts on this? I'd like to hear from you in the comments. Thank you for watching, and please take care.